My name is Nathan Cole, and for as long as I can remember, I was the afterthought of my family, the invisible one who worked hard but was never recognized, the one whose quiet sacrifices were mistaken for weakness, and whose silence was taken as permission to be overlooked. I grew up believing that if I poured everything into my family, if I bent over backward to provide, to support, to help, then maybe, just maybe, they would see me as worthy, as one of them, as more than just the quiet son who always sat at the corner of the table. But the truth was far darker. My family didn't just ignore me, they exploited me. They saw my kindness as naivety, my generosity as obligation, and my loyalty as chains they could yank whenever they pleased. I had been saving since I was 16, every dollar I could scrape from part-time jobs, tutoring, and eventually long hours working while studying. I never had the luxury of splurging like my siblings did. While they flaunted new clothes, new phones, and trips with friends, I was the one carrying leftovers in my backpack, stretching a single pair of shoes far past their lifespan, and walking to places just to save a bus fare. Every sacrifice I made was tied to one goal. I wanted to build something secure, a future that couldn't be taken away, a little savings that would eventually allow me to breathe, to finally feel safe in a world that had never offered me a safety net. But I never imagined that the very people I trusted most, the people I believed I was protecting all along, would strip me of that dream in the cruelest way possible. It happened gradually, almost too subtle for me to catch at first. My brother would borrow small amounts here and there, promising to pay me back. My sister would ask me to cover a bill, insisting she'd return it next week. My parents, well, they didn't even ask. They simply told me that since I was working and they were struggling, I had a responsibility to pitch in. And pitch in I did, month after month, year after year, watching my savings grow slower than it should have. I convinced myself it was fine, that family came first, that maybe one day they would remember how much I had given and treat me differently. But the day came when everything I had scraped together, every sleepless night, every skipped meal, every hour of grinding work disappeared with one cruel twist. It was a crisp morning when I walked into the kitchen and found my brother sitting there, looking smug, with a piece of paper in his hand. He slid it toward me like it was some kind of prize. My stomach dropped when I read it. It was my bank statement. My account balance wasn't just lower, it was practically empty. Tens of thousands of dollars gone. I looked at him, shaking, not believing what I was seeing, and asked him what this meant. That was when the laughter came. My parents, my siblings, all of them sitting there, chuckling like it was the funniest joke they'd ever seen. "We thought you were smart," my sister said. "But really, you were just hoarding money while we were drowning. Did you think we wouldn't find out?" My father leaned back, arms crossed, and said with finality, "You've been sitting on money this whole time, Nathan. And we needed it more than you ever did. Family shares. You don't get to keep it all to yourself." My chest tightened, my vision blurred, and for the first time in my life, I realized the truth. I wasn't their family. Not really. I was their safety net, their backup plan, their convenient fool. That night, I packed a small bag, left the house without a word, and walked into the dark streets with nothing but anger and betrayal burning inside me. I had nothing, no savings, no support, no one waiting for me. I crashed on couches, worked shifts that barely covered rent, and learned to eat on less than $5 a day. And yet, somewhere in the middle of that misery, a new fire lit inside me. If my family thought I was weak, if they thought they had taken everything from me, they were wrong. They hadn't taken my mind, my work ethic, or my determination. I swore that night that I would never be that vulnerable again, never give anyone that kind of power over me. I built myself from scratch. I worked 2, sometimes 3 jobs, studied late at night, picked up freelance projects, and learned skills no one thought I was capable of. I fell asleep on trains, in libraries, even at my desk, but slowly, brick by brick, I rebuilt my life. Years passed, and the same family who had laughed at me faded into the background like ghosts. I never called, never visited, never reached out. I told myself they didn't deserve to see the man I was becoming. But life has a way of bringing things full circle. One afternoon, after years of silence, I received an invitation, my father's birthday gathering. At first, I wanted to burn it, to ignore it, and let them rot in the memory of what they'd done. But something in me stirred. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was the thought of closure. Or maybe it was the quiet desire to finally look them in the eye, not as the weak boy they had mocked, but as the man they had underestimated. I decided to go. When I walked into that house, the same walls that had once suffocated me now looked smaller, duller, almost fragile. My siblings' laughter filled the air, but it wasn't the same confident laughter I remembered. It was forced, brittle, weighed down by years that hadn't been kind to them. They looked older, tired, worn out in ways money couldn't fix. My father's hair had gone gray, my mother's face lined with worry. For the first time, I didn't feel anger. I felt something strange, pity. Dinner was served, conversations buzzed, but eventually, the room fell quiet as my father raised his glass. His eyes landed on me, almost surprised that I was there, and he said, "It's good to see you again, Nathan. You've done well for yourself, haven't you?" The room shifted, eyes turned toward me, and I realized they already knew. They had heard about the business I had built, about the investments I had made, about how the boy they had drained dry had risen higher than any of them could have imagined. My brother cleared his throat, looking down at his plate. My sister fidgeted with her napkin, and for the first time in my life, I had their silence, the kind of silence that comes not from dismissal, but from respect. I could have thrown their betrayal in their faces. I could have mocked them, humiliated them the way they once humiliated me. But instead, I stood up, looked around the table, and simply said, "I spent years angry at all of you. But the truth is, if it weren't for what you did, I might never have become who I am today. You took everything from me, and in return, you gave me the drive to build a life that no one can take away. So tonight, I'm not here to curse you. I'm here to thank you." Silence hung heavy for a moment. Then my mother's eyes filled with tears, my father's face softened, and my brother whispered a quiet apology. For the first time, I wasn't the forgotten son. I was the one they finally saw. And as I walked out of that house later that night, the air cool against my skin, I felt lighter than I ever had before. Because I knew I had won, not by crushing them, but by proving to myself that no betrayal, no cruelty, no theft could keep me from becoming who I was meant to be. If you're listening to this, maybe you've been betrayed too. Maybe you've been overlooked, underestimated, or even robbed by the very people you trusted most. Let me tell you this, their cruelty does not define you. Your strength, your resilience, your refusal to give up, that's what defines you. Keep pushing, keep fighting, because one day, you'll look back and realize you didn't just survive. You became unstoppable. If this story struck a chord with you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories that remind us no matter how dark it gets, there's always a way to rise.